lines of engagement as well. So we were actually talking about different scenarios of instability that Indian leadership over the period of time has orchestrated. And as a responsible country, Pakistan has attempted to restore state stability so that the conflictual tendencies can be addressed properly, and where India should not be allowed to misuse that controlled environment or controlled chaos in its favor. So some of the aspects that I have already explained were talked. It was the first scenario that I referred was 1974 Smiling Buddha nuclear explosion that Indian usually referred as peaceful nuclear explosion. And as a result of that peaceful nuclear explosion in continuation of Indian military strategies in South Asia to disintegrate Pakistan and to isolate Pakistan and to corner Pakistan to a level where Pakistan subdue to Indian strategic ambitions. That incident of 1974 further exaggerated security anxiety of Pakistan. So to Pakistan has to start its own nuclear program. So the second scenario was related to 1986-87 Brastek, the famous Brastek military exercise of India. And at that time, it was one of the biggest conventional military exercise ever happened during that time period in the Cold War. And that Brastek military exercise actually created another insecurity layer within Pakistan's strategic calculus. And Pakistan has to come forward and reciprocate military posturing in terms of mobilizing its own forces, and also a kind of a dropping hint of a nuclear capability that came into play, and Indian military calculations deemed it necessary to withdraw their forces from the Rajasthan border. The third case scenario that I would refer here to sensitize the audience in terms of understanding the dynamics of nuclear threshold here is about the again in 1990s when Indian military leadership under the garb of political decision making started their missile programs, and one of the missile program was about Prithvi, and the second was about Agni. The Prithvi is normally the short-range ballistic missile, and the Agni is basically about medium-range nuclear delivery systems. It mostly covers the length and depth of Pakistan as a whole. So the resultant instability compelled again Pakistan to respond through the development of its own nuclear missile programs like Ghaznavi, Shaheen, and Tauqeer. At that time, I will not be saying they were nuclear missile programs, but it was a kind of missile program that was deemed necessary for conventional, and later on was the nuclear ballistic missiles, ensuring that the vast geographical dimensions of the Indian peninsula must came within the Pakistani strategic range. So the Indian attempt to introduce strategic instability was adequately checked once again. The fourth, case or scenario is quite strategic, and it is again in the 90s. India came out into the open and transited from a so-called peaceful nuclear state to an overt nuclear weapon state by conducting 5 nuclear tests on 11th of May 1998. So these were followed immediately by immature political threats or by responsible politicians of India to drove home the point of the strategic balance having swung into India's favor. Pakistan, as a response, confidently responded by conducting 6 nuclear tests within 2 weeks of the Indian test and restored the strategic balance once again. At the case 5 or the fifth scenario is also about, it is basically about the traumatic delusion into the Indian military thought. In the first decade of the 21st century, because of Pakistan's nuclear equalizer, the Indian military lost the advantage of relative asymmetry in conventional forces against Pakistan. Further, Indian failure to force Pakistan in 2001, 2002, despite the 10 months full-scale military deployment of Operation Parakram, it also dented its superior competitive monopoly mindset against Pakistan. As a result, India conceived and operationalized the provocative Cold Star Doctrine. So between 2005 and 2010, as a possible solution to regain the strategic advantage in a limited war scenario against Pakistan, so the Cold Star Doctrine was seemed or sought a kind of solution in the Indian military mind. It formally admitted in 2014. So Indians actually formally admitted that the existence of the Coast Guard Doctrine is a reality, uh, uh, but it took almost 10 years of denial for New Delhi to come at a point when they said that it is there as a reality. So this shows the madness of Indian stalwarts, both political and military, who were attempting to find space for limited conventional war against and established nuclear power in an environment of a nuclear overhang in South Asia. So, in the face of this destabilizing development, Pakistan took corresponding operational, doctrinal, and force developmental measures, both in the conventional as well as nuclear fields, including the development of tactical nuclear weapons, which is Nasser, and the establishment of a full spectrum data regime in order to ensure the strategic stability in South Asia. As a consequence, the Coast Guard Doctrine stayed neutralized and nuclear deterrence upheld while putting an iron wall before the large-scale war between India and Pakistan. Scenario number six is in fact about reassures the reassures to the students of international relations, peace and conflict studies, even strategic studies, that the enemy of Pakistan is not only irrational but an irresponsible nuclear state mesmerized by the false flag operations. So this scenario, which is six, it's about the February 2019 Indian false flag pretext operation against Pakistan. As of it, we know that to maintain the dubious track record of its consistent attempts to induce strategic instability, that time was India linked to seeking political and electoral advantages for the BJP. India embarrassed itself by undertaking an unsuccessful airstrike at Balakot in mainland Pakistan, crossing the red line of the international boundary. So in the process, there was much chest thumping in the Indian strategic circles about having, called Pakistan's nuclear bluff, which in Pakistani judgment has been a very poor conclusion. So, however, Pakistan Air Force responded the next day through a carefully calibrated response in two ways. The first was, as you know, that it struck with precision the unmanned flanks of three ground targets in the Rajouri sector, so as not to cause casualties and spared the senior hierarchy of the Indian military that was present at one of the targets. Second, the Pakistan Air Force humiliated the Indian Air Force by shooting down two Indian Air Force fighters and capturing one pilot, not to mention the Indian Air Force fratricide in shooting down one of its own helicopters, resulting in seven deaths. And that, helicopter casualties could be referred as taking part in their own blood. So these two actions drove home the point strongly that Pakistan would forever continue to disallow strategic instability to become a norm. So strategic stability was once again restored and no new normal was allowed to prevail. The scenario number seven could be dealt, or in fact, it is all about the continuation of implementing the same old playbook on the pretext of false flag operations. Indian attack on Pakistan on the night of 6th and 7th May 2025 this year, a few months back. Again, Pakistan had to reset the course of strategic stability by denying India an opportunity to set the new normal. So the dynamics of Indian false flag playbook will be discussed in detail by the respected Dr. Salma Malik in our presentation, which is about from Pahalgam to Ceasefire, the anatomy of a crisis in South Asia. So I will leave this particular discussion of this particular section for her remarks. So the case, which is the last one, the scenario 8, in my opinion, in my understanding, is a point that runs as a scarlet thread through the last 5 decades as a constant. It is the effect of large-scale budgetary allocations aimed at massive induction of equipment and technology and expansion in India's 3 conventional armed services, its nuclear forces on land, air, and sea, as also a dangerous reach in space. It would be accurate to conclude that these allocations
तूने मुझे वो बताया नहीं मैं मुझे ढाई तो मैंने वेबिनार ज्वाइन किया वेबिनार लाया वो फंडामेंटल तो ट्रेडिंग वाला
sorry for the interruption. Maybe someone was speaking. I would these in keeping in view the 8 scenarios where I feel that Indian military political stalwarts have attempted to destabilize the South Asian security and put the whole region into a kind of situation where Armageddon-like, situation can erupt. So it would not be accurate to. It would be actually accurate to conclude that these scenarios and Indian allocations and reductions to modernize its military keep South Asia in a perpetual state of strategic instability. To cut the long history short, uh, who is the source and orchestrator of instability in South Asia shall not be the secret anymore. The New Delhi declaration of war against the rule and norms-based international system that provides right to self-determination to the people of Kashmir, along with the provocative Hindutva ideology embedded within the political, military, and social fabric of India, continuously shakes the dynamics of nuclear threshold just for their petty political benefits. So it is important to note that on the nuclear threshold ladder, the lower end of the nuclear spectrum is alike playing with the fire, whereas continuous escalation in the conflict takes it to the level of Armageddon, that is the upper end of the spectrum. India has always miscalculated the threshold ladder. If you have a whole a menu of options in a given situation that pertains to escalation ladder, traditionally the appetizer will start from actions on the line of control, and they go all the way up to the nuclear option. The bad story for the escalation ladder is that in India, the political rhetoric is leading the military professionalism, which is why on the menu, Indian electoral politics camouflaged with the false flag operations is also added, which is one of the most elusive dynamics within the different thresholds prevailing between India and Pakistan. So while it may be easy to climb the first stair on the escalatory ladder, the second step would always belong to Pakistan. And that India's choice to move to the third step would invariably be dangerously problematic in anticipation of the fourth step response of Pakistan. Which is why it is not wrong to conclude that India is habitual to play with the fire at the lower end of the nuclear spectrum and runs amok when Armageddon becomes a reality at the upper end of the spectrum. Which is why the United States President Donald Trump's statement calling the May 2025 conflict a bad nuclear war is therefore not out of the context. Also, that the escalatory rung climbing could not be so neatly choreographed, but could quickly get out of hand and morph into a major war, which perhaps nobody wanted, but whose outcomes would be disastrous for the region and the globe. Last but not the least, there are few parallels of a country possessing nuclear weapons conducting itself with greater irresponsibility than India did against another nuclear armed country. The overall contextualization of South Asian security and insecurity lies on a very fundamental point that the internal political problems of India needs to be resolved within. They don't need to externalize it. And the external international issues uh, prevailing on or denting Indian international stature, it needs to be resolved based on international norms, international system, and rule-based system of the United Nations. So the very problem of India to externalize its internal issues and uh, externalize it and making external issues its internal problems. So that amalgamation of Indian internal politics and foreign policy is creating that feed or providing feed to stability in South Asia. Pakistan, as a responsible country, has always created a room for dialogue and discussion for the sake of greater peace and stability. But unfortunately, Indian military mindset and Hindutva mindset has always created problems for peace and stability in South Asia. So thank you very much for focusing on the presentation. I would definitely love to answer your questions during question and answer sessions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
sir,
Lucas.
for your presentation. Very comprehensive. You discuss all. Our last speaker with us, Madam Salma Malik. Madam, over to you, Madam. Thank you. Are you here, ma'am? Ma'am Salma?
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम
जी मैम, वालेकुम सलाम मैम. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
जी thank you so much. Just give me a minute. I'm switching off the video and I'll rejoin you. Thank you very much, Shafqat, for giving me this opportunity to be part of your forum. And after listening to Dr. Shabana and Dr. Tauqeer, I feel that most of the things have already been covered. So there isn't much left for me to look into. But Kashmir is one aspect that, as much as we talk about it, it requires ample discussion. And what I'm going to bring to your audience here is, and I'm very happy to see some young people joining this forum. And of course, Shafqat, you yourself are a young person. So heartiest congratulations and very best wishes to you for creating this forum, for taking it further and making it so proactive. Now, when we look at this particular scenario about from Pahalgam to the ceasefire and looking at Kashmir as a game changer, there are several things that come to fore. Number one, when in 2019, India, through its unilateralism, ended up confiscating and revoking the Article 370 and 35A, that kind of was a blatant violation, not exactly kind of, that was a blatant violation of international laws. But given the fact that it is a very selective way through which the international audience looks at issues of human rights, issues of people's aspirations and rights and all, there wasn't much of traction that India received as a result of its actions. And that kind of emboldened India. And we have seen over the decades how India has managed to use Kashmir to advance its own self-created narrative. From a movement which was completely, purely, genuinely, and very honestly a freedom movement, Kashmir has, through these last few decades, been very, very cleverly converted by India into a terrorist movement, quote unquote. And all the freedom fighters have been painted by the Modi government, even governments prior to that, especially those under the BJP rule. And the media that Modi has created, which since 2025 May conflict, we are calling it the Goti media. So this media has been very proactive in giving a very warped and unfortunately wrong depiction of what Kashmir freedom movement is all about. And this also provides the central government in Delhi to carry out blatant violations of human rights. Unfortunately, there are a few things that we need to look into. And one of those aspects is that in Pakistan, despite the fact that every Pakistani kid, since the day he or she is born, gets to hear one word, and that is Jammu and Kashmir, and the Indian occupation on the Jammu and Kashmir, hardly knows about Kashmir. And there is very little information that people have, and that is credible information. And over the decades, Kashmir has been actually used for so much of political echo chambering and creating a voice and propaganda, that the real essence of what the Kashmiri problem is has been lost. That does not mean that Pakistan stands on Kashmir is wrong. Pakistan's stand as well as stance on Kashmir is absolutely correct. It is very legitimate and it is very humane. Yet the fact is that we never really teach our younger lot at schools and at universities or any other place what exactly happened in Kashmir. We use some big phrases, and through those phrases we try to tell people, and we make it a very emotional aspect, and we don't look at the logic of it. We don't also become introspective and see where we erred when it came to the larger question of Jammu and Kashmir. But since the day Kashmir problem became a global agenda, it became an agenda on the UN table. Very quickly, I'll walk this audience through the earlier years, and then I'll come to May 2025, or rather to 2019 and onwards. When the princely states were being a kind of secessioned between the two post-independence British independent states, that is India and Pakistan. So this question of settlement of princely states was very simple. I think there were 556 princely states, some of them nestled in Pakistan, Muslim states ruled by Muslim rulers, having Muslim population, and having no issues where these people needed to move out. Similarly, there were some Hindu states, Hindu rulers, Hindu population groups, and their consensus was to join India. And then there were, of course, some princely states in East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. And so there was an amicable settlement of many of these states. The problem created was when the question of settlement of 2-3 bigger states came. One was Hyderabad Dakkan, which is now called Telangana, which was in the south east of India. And nowhere did it share borders, just a stretchy maritime border with East Pakistan. But that too was kind of an overstretch because the exclusive economic zone was also different in that regard. But it did not share a land border or even a contiguous border with either West or East Pakistan. Then there was Junagadh and Manwadar, and then there was the greater state of Kashmir. Now, when we talk about Jammu and Kashmir, for the audience, we need to be aware of one thing. The area which is known as Jammu and Kashmir, which includes Ladakh, which includes Jammu, includes the Valley of Kashmir, includes the current Azad Jammu and Kashmir, that is with Pakistan, and also Gilgit and Baltistan, Diami district, Hunza, Nagar, everything. All of these states were small princely states that used to be part of the Greater Tibet at one time. And through series of migrations, series of conquest, and various other notions, over the centuries, this area, which was in any case nestled between high mountains, Himalaya, Hindu Kush, and Karakoram, three of the largest and tallest mountain series of the world. These areas became very exclusive. It's a large valley when you look at that, and there are valleys within the valleys. And gradually, these Buddhist and non-paganist religions that were being followed there were converted to Islam by people such as Bulbul Shah, Shah Hamadan, and various other people who came to this area. Some came from Hamadan, Shah Hamadan came from Persia. Bulbul Shah he came from Central Asia, and there were several influences. And here we see a huge amount of a tolerant Sufist Islam being spread in this area. And the Kashmiris, then they became a very, very unique race who were tolerant towards all religion, and they also had an interfaith flavor to their religion, which was called the Nur Bakshis, who were Shias and Sunnis mix, and they loved to have an interfaith marriage in that account. And then we see that initially Kashmir remained out of people's focus, but then with the British expansion and all, Kashmir was an area which was of greater significance given its riches, and the British then purchased Kashmir, and the Maharaja purchased Kashmir from the British, and things went on the way they were. When the question of secession of Kashmir came, the Maharaja toyed with the idea, despite the fact that he was a Hindu Dogra leader. Please don't get swayed by his name. Hari Singh or Gulab Singh is primarily a Rajput caste, and the Singhs are the Rajput Singhs. They are not Sikh. But despite being a Hindu ruler, he did not see himself progressing much further under a Hindu rule. So he toyed with the idea of siding with Pakistan. And he came to Jinnah and he gave Jinnah the idea. And of course, he gave the similar proposal to the Indians. And the Indians turned down his proposal of greater autonomy. When he gave this proposal of greater autonomy to Jinnah, Jinnah was quite tolerant towards it. And he said, we'll definitely accord you that. However, the Maharaja also feared that in a Muslim Pakistan, his future may not really be that bright. And he had similar fears with India as well. So he went for a standstill agreement. And when he went for a standstill agreement, which meant neither here nor there, freezing the status, which also meant that freezing the status of his population, he used that time to start persecuting the Muslims. He disarmed the Muslim military, and in that place, he gave guns and weapons to the Sikh Jattas who were returning or who were coming to Kashmir from the rest of Punjab, Haryana, and other places, carrying with them the stories of partition carnage. And then they started to turn on these Kashmiri Muslims. Then the Maharaja also told these Kashmiri Muslims that you should travel to Pakistan or to safer areas. And what they would do is that they would put them in buses, offload them in deserted areas, and carry out large massacres. Hence, the trauma of being massacred and being wronged by the regime is something which is very familiar with the Kashmiris, and they carry it not today, they carry these scars for ages. Let's move forward, and then we had the first war on Kashmir in 1948, where 47-48.
Sorry for interrupting
Yes.
you. Please complete your presentation within 2 minutes due to shortage of time.
So the 47-48 war, 65 war, 71 war, all changed the dynamics of Kashmir. And then Kashmir became a nuclear flashpoint when India and Pakistan went nuclear in 1998. Now, this is a good idea because Kashmir came in a limelight, but that took away the main essence of Kashmir as a problem of human rights, as a problem of unfinished agenda of partition. And if we bring it further forward to 2025, the Indus Water Treaty and the abrogation of the Indus Water Treaty has again robbed Kashmir of its salience when both the nuclear and the water issue have actually suppressed the rights and the privileges and the question of autonomy of Kashmiri people. There have been several notions, there have been several proposals to solve Kashmir. And those proposals have been brought by foreign experts. They have been brought by the UN, the international agencies, by special envoys. They have been deliberated between Muslim Pakistanis and Indians. But one tragedy to Kashmir is that any deliberation on Kashmir does not take into account the Kashmiris. Now, because I'm very, very short on time, the few things, as I said, the nuclear and the Indus Water Treaties abrogation has kind of put Kashmir in a pale light now. Then, after 2019, Modi's unilateralism has also contributed to a greater change in the demographics of Kashmir. And several of us fear that Modi himself or the Indian regime itself would ask for plebiscite when they feel confident that they have totally changed the landscape, demographic landscape of Kashmir, and any elections then that would take place would be in India's favor. Already, there's a lot of tinkering with the population groups. Third, China is very much part of Kashmir problem, because China not only has the Shakskam Valley, it also holds a ground which is Chen area. And can Kashmir ever be independent? One can only wish. However, even in independent Kashmir, let's say if we put together all the constituent areas of Greater Kashmir, not only the Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, if we put about, thank you so much, thank you. So if you put together all these areas, the Shakskam Valley, which China holds, Gilgit-Baltistan, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Kashmir Valley, Jammu, Ladakh, Aksai Chin, it's a huge area. Despite being a huge area, it remains landlocked, which also means that it would have to rely either on India or on Pakistan for its survival, the way Afghanistan is. Well, if Kashmir reverts to Pakistan, that's an ideal thing for Kashmiris, but you also have to take into account that there's also a sizable Hindu as well as Buddhist population that has no affiliation with Pakistan in terms of religious affinity or otherwise. Then, as I said, there's been a lot of demographic engineering in Kashmir, which also changes the dynamics a lot. And now Modi has been offering a lot of money to the Kashmiris in the name of the women of Kashmir are getting their rights. And the people can now sell their property and become rich, and people are doing that. As a result of that, Japanese and other American and Israeli real estate and business enterprises are entering Kashmir and buying property in bulk. The Hindus or the Indians otherwise from the mainland had always dreamt to have a shikara or a home in Kashmir, and now their dream is being realized. So things are changing a lot. Okay. Lastly, I would say that the LOC, which has been a hot point between these two countries, that if they cannot fight openly, then the LOC becomes a frontier to fight, was once again activated in this particular war. And then we saw what happened to the Indians. They had to throw in the towel and raise the white flag. But where does this all take Pakistan and India and Kashmir to? Unfortunately, Kashmir has further been relegated into history. The meta-narrative again becomes hijacked by India and Pakistan. The ground offensive, the time for ground offensives and heavy battle, boots on ground is somewhat becoming redundant. The narrative that India has created around Kashmir is favorable to India and not to Pakistan or to the Kashmiris. And that, unfortunately, does not bode well for Kashmir. If we have still any time left, please feel free to ask me a question. Whether you can ask me a question in Urdu or English, either way, it's fine. Thank you. I will just end here. And I'm going to just leave it open-ended. And my last point on Kashmir would be that when the Americans said that we are going to help you settle the Kashmir question, please do not take it in a very emotionally positive stride. Americans always say these narratives. They make good headlines that earned Donald Trump a recommendation from Pakistan to get a Nobel Peace Prize. And that's about it. No one is going to do anything on Kashmir. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the people of Kashmir who are going to keep fighting for their homeland, and they will get their homeland, inshallah. Thank you, Shafqat. I'm done.
Thank you very much, madam, for your presentation. Very informative. Uh, uh, in last, we have just 3 minutes left. So I cannot. We have just one question for Sir Dr. Tauqeer Sargana. Sir, what is the impact of nuclear dimension on this rivalry, particularly concept of minimum credibility returns? How does it prevent the escalation conflict?
Shafqat, Assalamu alaikum. Actually, because I have seen the question and answer, remarks at the sidebar, I think there are many students who want to ask questions from respected Dr. Shamara Fayaz, Dr. Salma, and of course myself. So, is there any way that we can help them get some or help them address their queries? Can you
Sure,
prolong the
sir.
session?
Ji, sir, carry on, please.
No, I just asking you, can you prolong the session so that my other colleagues can also answer their questions?
तौकीर आप अपना आराम से सवाल का जवाब दें। जो मेरी तरफ सवाल आया था कश्मीर से रिलेटेड, एक ये था कि इंडिपेंडेंट स्टेट बनेगी। इट्स अ गुड विशफुल थिंकिंग, वन कैन ओनली होप, बट दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम दैट गोज विद इट। और मेरे ख्याल में आप जो जवाब देंगे उसमें हमारे सवालों के भी जवाब बहुत हद तक एड्रेस हो जाते हैं, especially when it comes to dialogue and negotiation. It takes two to tango. So Pakistan is always open and willing for a dialogue. इंडिया नहीं आता। और कश्मीर का जो मसला है वो बायलैटरल मसला है, वो ट्राइलैटरल नहीं है, जिसमें अनफॉर्चुनेटली कश्मीरी हिस्सेदार नहीं है। मेरी तरफ से यही जवाब है। ओवर टू तौकीर सरगाना साहब। थैंक यू।
Thank you. Shafqat, I can see the question. So which question you are referring that I need to answer?
Sir, basically, what is the impact of nuclear dimension on this rivalry? Particular concept of minimum credible returns. How does it prevent the escalation conflict?
Okay, Shafqat, first of all, it is important to understand how this concept of minimum credible deterrence emerged, because we all know that in the aftermath of 1998, the South Asia was introduced to overt nuclearization. From the covert side, we entered into overt nuclearization. It was a declared policy between both India and Pakistan. Now they are nuclear weapon states. Earlier to that, India sustained into a kind of peaceful nuclear explosion tendency. It was again a false flag pretext for the India, whereas they were leading towards nuclear weapons program. But as a response, when they conducted their nuclear test on 11th May 1998, Pakistan has to reciprocate to the Indian nuclear ambitions. Otherwise, Pakistan was always in favor of nuclear weapons free zone in South Asia. But on 28th May, we have to respond that. So after responding in terms of nuclear tit for tat response, Pakistan came forward with a kind of